The S&P 500, the Nasdaq, the Dow Jones, stocks are tanking. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is pumping. In this video, we'll be discussing exactly that, talking about Bitcoin's relative outperformance compared to stocks. We'll also be touching on gold recently surging and the most up-to-date tariff developments and Trump continuing to butt his head with Jerome Powell. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Let's jump right into the video. So first of all, we have to address Bitcoin's pump today. What we can see here is that all legs from the Bitcoin pump is coming from Binance. As we can see on this chart, which essentially measures all of the exchanges, what do you notice? This yellow line over here represents the volume on Binance. And if we take a look at the other lines on all other exchanges, OKX, Kraken, Bybit, KuCoin, Coinbase, and Finex, what we can see is that they are nowhere near contributing to the same level as Binance. So is this just a Binance whale that's pumping the price of Bitcoin? As I discussed in my earlier video, I still firmly think that it's likely that we could be rolling over, especially when we're starting to look at the stock market performance. So far on the daily, as I refresh this page, we can see that the Dow Jones is down 2.74%. We can also see that the S&P 500 is down 2.87% at the time of recording this video, and the Nasdaq is down 3.2%. This over here is a pretty significant drop across all stock markets, which is why when I go back to the Bitcoin price action, so long as we're not holding above the 200-day moving average, which when I zoom in over here is this blue line, I still think that it's likely that we resort lower unless we get some kind of miracle. I know that a lot of people are getting excited, especially on crypto Twitter. We can see a lot of influencers already talking about the decoupling which is happening. But do you remember the last time the stock market dumped? What happened to Bitcoin? Bitcoin showed relative outperformance, and then a day or two later, Bitcoin went ahead and dumped massively. So I'm just telling you to be cautious. Everyone can have their own opinions as to where the market is headed. And yes, this orange zone was my primary focus, but until we can actually hold above this blue line, which is the 200-day moving average, 88.2K, I would not be super confident in the recent Bitcoin price action. What we saw over here, for example, that I discussed in my previous videos is that we did wick above and then we ended up rolling down much lower. Let's see how it develops over the next few days. Maybe we end up wicking above this crucial level once again, only to come back lower. Only time will tell, but I will repeat myself in saying that this is not a bad area to take profits if you were already in a Bitcoin long. Personally, I'm still looking for shorts, but as we broke out of this diagonal trend line, the pump was inevitable. Now the question was, could we move higher from here? For me to be super bullish, we need to hold this level over here, this blue line, as support, and then I would go ahead and target all the way up to $91,800, which I'll remind you is in fact the bottom of our existing range where Bitcoin held support several times. Now, what's happening with the news here? Well, Trump came out and said that hopefully Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week. If that's the case, I would actually be expecting the stock market and crypto to rally at least a little bit, but there's still a lot of uncertainty with the tariffs because right before I recorded this video, news just broke that India is going to impose 12% tariff on steel to limit cheap imports from China. Then we also have President Trump that came out and said that Fed Jerome Powell is a major loser. Insulting the Fed chair accomplishes nothing. We know the narrative. We know that he wants Jerome Powell out of his position, but ultimately it's not up to him. The Fed has its own governance model at this point, and they will not be influenced by political pressures. Trump just wants Jerome Powell to cut rates, but Jerome Powell won't cut rates just because Trump wants it. That's not how things work. And this is another reason why, on top of the tariffs, these two butting heads does not instill confidence in me that Bitcoin will be moving much higher from here. Once again, with all of the information that we have available, my base case for Bitcoin is that we will likely roll over. Let's see what happens. If we end up grinding higher from here and holding this 200-day moving average as support, honestly, I would prefer that because for my spot position, it would be amazing. But in terms of trading, this is the most important resistance level until we can potentially break above the bull market support band. But we'll cover that when we get there. Currently, we are in the bull market support band, right above the 21-week exponential moving average, But that 200-day moving average, as we discussed, is an important level for Bitcoin to break if we are to move higher. If you want to trade this market based on what I discussed in the YouTube videos, make sure to sign up with the first link in my description down below. It brings you directly to Weeks. You can get an insane 20% deposit bonus, which means that if you deposit, say, $5,000, for example, you would get $1,000 back in rewards for trading. Also, if you're a relatively big trader, based on your trading volume, you can earn up to $28,000 in bonuses. The first link in my description down below. Don't forget to sign up, and all you need is an email and a password to do so. I need to touch on gold again briefly because we're just continuing to print all-time highs. We can hardly break down on the hourly time frame without seeing some more upside. This is crazy. Gold has outperformed the S&P 500 over the past 20 to 25 years at this point. And there's three last things that I want to touch on for Bitcoin. The first one being Bitcoin dominance, including stablecoins. What we can see here is that it's very much the same picture as Bitcoin dominance on its own, continues to grind higher. Right now, Bitcoin and stablecoins account for around 72% of the total crypto market cap, and this is only rising with all of the tariff uncertainty. The previous all-time high is right around 76%. So I wonder, can we just chop around here and then make it to that all-time high? I think it's more than likely, to be perfectly honest. Now, the next thing here is that Michael Saylor did come out between April 14th and April 20th and bought 6,556 Bitcoins at an average price of $84,785. This is a total of $555 million worth of Bitcoin. This guy just keeps on showing us his conviction. He keeps on buying. And I don't blame him. I was buying Bitcoin around the 80K level. I was also buying Bitcoin around the 75K level. If you're looking to dollar cost average into Bitcoin, these are still reasonable levels if you have a 10, 20-year time frame. I still firmly believe that Bitcoin will establish itself as the gold of the 21st century, and we could be potentially seeing a 7-figure Bitcoin in the upcoming decades. You might think I'm crazy, but ultimately, that's my conviction. I really think that Bitcoin will continue to establish itself as a global reserve. And the last thing that we'll discuss in this quick update is the liquidation heat map. What we can see is on the weekly chart, most of the liquidity is now to the downside as a lot of people started longing Bitcoin. Now, looking at, for example, the 24-hour chart, there's a couple of shorts that started popping in since Bitcoin started stalling out at this level, but ultimately still a lot more liquidity to the downside. So what you want to consider here is that it's likely that we at least come down and grab that liquidity even if Bitcoin is to move higher. And just one last look at Bitcoin before we close out this video, we can see that we are still below the 200-day moving average. Keep your eyes on this level, especially if you're trading this market. And a reminder, if you want to trade with me, you can sign up to Weeks with the first link in my description down below. And to really wrap things up here, I just wanted to give you a quick overview on what's been happening with the tariffs and how things have developed. So after Japan said that they won't be fighting Trump's tariffs, they came out today and said that they also won't just keep conceding to Trump's tariffs if it affects the Japanese economy. So at this point, the S&P 500 has now erased $2.5 trillion since the April 9th high after the 90-day tariff pause. And to give you a little bit of a timeline, Bloomberg came out on April 16th and posted an article that actually talked about how Japan's negotiations with the US were well underway. The Trump administration officials also claimed that trade deals were being discussed with 50 plus countries. The markets rallied sharply on this news over the last 5 to 10 days. Now, here is the perfect timeline of the recent events. We got that 90-day pause that was announced. Markets absolutely soared from the bottom. Then we got that top for the S&P 500, came back down, chopped a bit, and then the trade deal headlines with Japan started to emerge where we got a little bit of a pump. And then this is when China came out, which we discussed in my previous video, and they issued a warning to not cooperate with the US. So until Trump actually comes out and confirms that some of these deals have fallen into place, I don't think that we can be very confident that the market will just continue to soar, because right now it's all talk. Yes, he comes out and says things are going well, but these countries won't just bend over backwards to Trump and to the US. So you do need to consider that, and obviously that will affect Bitcoin's price action. As I've said before, I don't think that we're quite at this safe haven status for Bitcoin yet, but I do think that we will get there in the future. And that sums up this quick update. Trade tensions continue to escalate, and Trump is still continuing to butt heads with Jerome Powell. In the meantime, we're seeing a little bit of outperformance from Bitcoin compared to equities, but I don't think that this will last much longer. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.